our webinar from SSF Consulting on digital transformation for nonprofits. And we're very happy to have you with us here today. Glad you could make the time to join us. And we'll get started now. If you're new to our firm, let's just make some quick introductions here. I'm Tom Aker. I'm the Senior Solutions Consultant at Sensiba San Filippo, and I work in the technology consulting and advisory practice here. I've been working with accounting software for quite a long time now, and I've been working specifically with the Sage Intacct product for nonprofits for about 10 years. Prior to that, I worked with some other tier 1 ERPs, also working with both for-profit and nonprofit applications, and super excited to show you some of the capabilities available for digital transformation in our current time now.
And I'm Michael Sudbury, Senior Systems Implementation Specialist, Sensiba San Filippo. I have over 7 years experience implementing Sage Intacct and then also using it as the end user. So I've been on both sides. I love to see all that it can bring and values and efficiencies to nonprofits, and love to see the continued expansion of the product specifically for those not-for-profit needs.
So just a quick overview of Sensiba San Filippo. We are a full-service CPA firm. Michael and I work in the technology consulting practice, as I said, but we have a full tax department, full audit services, and business advisory consulting, as well as the technology piece. And we are certified B Corp, which we're very proud of. And our B Corp score went up this year, which is even more exciting. In our technology consulting practice specifically, we focus on assessments, implementations, and integrations. And that's just one facet of our overall SSF consulting practice. We also have internal audit, SOX support for companies that need that. And we do a lot of outsourced accounting. In that, of course, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it can be it could be just CFO services, or it can be the full soup to nuts, managing the accounting processes and the applications behind that. And you can see some of our applications that we work with in our technology practice here. Of course, Sage Intacct is our core financial offering, but we have all of, actually more than we could list on this slide here, of other applications that either work with Sage or that we consult on, including LeaseCrunch and Bill.com.
So here's an agenda of what we were wanting to cover today. Once again, we were talking about digital transformation for nonprofits. So we wanted to take a moment and highlight a few things that we feel Sage really excels at for nonprofits, both in creating efficiencies for your organization and giving you greater insight. So what we're going to cover today: accounting challenges, specifically for nonprofits, managing grant, fund, and donor accounting with Sage Intacct, managing and automating restrictions and release from restrictions, some AI tools like Geo Outlier Assistant and approvals, AP bill automation, budgets and spend management. We're also going to take a look at how you can automate your bank rec using rules and creation rules. Looking at pre-built reports that Sage has for nonprofits and also dashboards, and then outcome metrics.
Yeah, so one of the motivations for this webinar was that we've just seen in the last few years a lot of new demands on nonprofit finance teams. There's new service demands stemming from the pandemic, from the housing crisis, of course, there's increasing funding for climate change initiatives, as well as social equity and a lot of other requirements put on the nonprofit world these days. And at the same time, we're all experiencing a shortage of accounting talent and pipeline. So being able to maximize the productivity of the accountants and the folks that we do have is really important. And that's one of the reasons for driving a digital transformation. And of course, there's all this new funding. Some of it's from COVID relief, some of it is in the Infrastructure Act, but there's a lot of new funding that's coming through, and it has its own reporting requirements, restrictions, and challenges, let's face it, for the finance team in a lot of nonprofits. And then, of course, there's been changes in revenue recognition rules and just the challenge in general of managing the budget and the spend with a larger service footprint. So one of the first things that we encounter when we're talking with a nonprofit is this increased funding across multiple programs and multiple funding sources makes it a lot of complications. So I just got a sample here where I have 3 grants, and they're funding 3 different programs in different ways. And so you might have one grant that's funding multiple programs. You might have one program that's being funded by multiple grants. And so managing all of this, this is only 3, but we have clients with 30 or more different grants that they're managing across different programs, locations, and a lot going on. It's a lot to manage if you're trying to do it all in spreadsheets. So one of the solutions to this, if we could go to the next slide, this is a sample of a report that would be something that a lot of our nonprofit finance folks in that situation would like to see. In this case, we're looking at the total of program expenses and all of the different funders going down in the rows there, spread across multiple programs, so that you can get a overall view in a single report of how those program expenses are being run up and who it's being funded by. In this case, this report here you would be able to drill into the details of it if you have this online, and therefore track down exactly what specific expenses are going to which programs. So the key to all of that is using what in the Sage Intacct world are called dimensions. In fancier systems, they may have other names, but one of the things that drew me to Sage Intacct for nonprofits was this capability of dimensions at a really attractive price point. So I like to show how it can be used to solve these accounting challenges for our nonprofits. So dimensions, well, let's see, let's talk about the middle here. So we have accounts and we have an entity in the middle. So, any accounting system has to have GL accounts. And just by definition, it has an entity, maybe only one, maybe lots. But then these dimensions are additional fields that go on can go on every transaction line, so that we can accumulate the data by site or by program. Maybe we need to track it by restriction. And so those are what we call core insight dimensions that are available. And we'll see a sample a little later on here of how those go into an accounting line. And then, of course, we have relationships. So we've got donors and vendors and employees. And those dimensions will get automatically tagged on every transaction line that is in our accounts receivable or our accounts payable, or perhaps employee expense reports or timesheets. So those are the primary dimensions that we work with. And then there's add-on dimensions. So for instance, if you have a let's say a gift store or something like that, or a large sales operation, maybe you have items in a warehouse. You can have, and we will have in this sample, grants and projects that we'll be tracking those expenditures to. And if you're using employee timesheets and project costing or grant costing, you would also then have the task that that employee is working on, and that's a dimension. So all of these dimensions add up to quite a lot. And then if that's not enough, you can actually add user-defined dimensions too. So all of these can be tagged on transaction lines that then flow through the whole financial workflow and to the financial statements.
And I think one really great point about all these dimensions is that you can really, it allows you to report on any combination of dimensions as well. So if you define certain filters, if we were looking at specific grants with a specific vendor, you know, it can drill into that level of detail and across multiple dimensions as well. And another thing is, should you need to configure it, we can also define relationships with dimensions. So if you only have a grant wanting to be able to code it to certain programs, you can also do a little bit of extra setup there and have a lot of control over what dimensions you're using as well.
Yeah, excellent point. All right, we have a polling question up here for CPE. And let's talk next about revenue recognition as soon as our poll is complete here. All right, looks like a majority here have attended some trainings on this topic before, but there's always new stuff. So hopefully everybody's getting something out of it. All right. I can share the results here. All right, so 75% have attended training before. All right, well, let's move on then. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we are accounting for restrictions and, well, revenue in general, revenue recognition. So if we have a situation where there is a barrier to performance from a donor or a grantor, and we have maybe a deliverable or some measure that needs to be met in order for that funding to either be released or to be distributed in the first place, and that funder has either a holdback or a right of return where they could ask for their money back if we didn't deliver, then that is an exchange transaction under ASU 2018-08, meaning that it's conditional, right? So you can't really recognize the revenue until either the condition is met or the deliverable has been provided. And so that goes under the regular revenue recognition rules that apply to for-profit organizations as well. Now, where it is an unconditional contribution, that is, there's either no performance barrier and there's no right of return, then there may be other restrictions on it. So there's a time or usage requirement, so that we have to demonstrate that funding is being used properly. So the thing about this is, and I think that especially organizations that haven't had this level of funding before, this type, is that you have to recognize the entire award, if that's a grant award, when it is awarded. So it's recognized as revenue then, but it's put into restricted net assets until the restriction is met, whether that's just time going by or whether that's expending the money for the designated purposes. So let's take a little bit more look at releasing those restrictions. Let's see. So what I'm going to show in a minute here is just this process where we receive restricted grant revenue that goes into the restricted net assets column. And then we are going to incur expenses, and those are qualified expenses for the grant's purpose. And those are coming out of our unrestricted funds. And then in order to basically reimburse the unrestricted net assets from our restricted, we need to make that journal entry to release revenues to recognize the satisfaction of the restrictions. And then the money is available in the unrestricted operating budget. So I'm going to share here and give you a view of how that can work. All right, so I'm going to go to a grant manager dashboard here. Michael, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
All right, let's take this to 11/30/21. And I'm gonna zoom in here on this restrictions and releases chart right here. So focusing on this Travis County contract, we can look at this chart here, and I can hover over the bar and I can see that my revenue on this so far is 95,000. So that's my restricted revenue that I've received. And I have incurred expenditures as of November of 29,000. And then I have released that 29,000 from restriction to match the revenue. Now, if I jump ahead to 12/31/21, go back down there. You can see now I've gotten another award. So now my revenue is up to 150,000 on that Travis County contract. And I have incurred more expenditures up to 86,000 now, but my release from restriction is still sitting back there at the November number of 29,000. So getting that remaining revenue released to match the expenditures is what we're going to solve for here. Now, it's these are journal entries, and if you're doing this now, you may be managing a whole lot of these different grants or contracts in spreadsheets. But we're going to show you a little trick for automating it using the technology that we have here. So let me, first of all, I'm going to just click on those expenditures so I can get a little report. You can see the kinds of costs that I am running up here. So I know I've got some, this is for an after-school program. I've got some food costs. I've got some program costs. And right here, you can see, actually, I'm just going to go to the AP bill here. So you can see in the bill detail lines down here, I have my location, my program, a specific site, the grant or project that's funding that. And so that's what I'm talking about with all the dimensions that go into a single line, and then they all become details that we can report on. So let's get to the process now of releasing those restrictions. So I'm going to go to, let's see. I'm going to go to my generate restriction release here in the general ledger. Now this is for nonprofits that are set up with the not-for-profit quick start template. This is an included functionality. It's not any add-on. And what I'm able to do here is in this restriction release, I can set the parameters for releasing those revenues out of restricted funds. So I've got, I'm going to update the date here to 12/31/21. I have a special journal created for the purpose of these releases. And all I'm doing is within this single GL account, the 4900, satisfaction of restrictions, I'm just moving it from the restricted fund to the unrestricted funds. I'm doing it for the current month because you saw that we already had it caught up through November. And I've picked a program expense group here that is gonna be the source for this. And then I am using the accrual book. You could use other books if we had like an allocation book or something like that, but we're just gonna use accrual, keep it simple. And there's that Travis County contract. This is the dimension that we're looking for. So when I hit generate on this, it's gonna take me to my release log, and you can see that release generation is running. It's in queue right now. So these run on a background server. They use dedicated servers for all these background processes and keeps the production servers going at top speed. But we can take a look at the previous one just to see how it looks here. So it generates a journal entry, and you can see right there it is debiting the temporarily restricted and crediting the unrestricted, but all within that one account. So that's our journal entry. I can click on this hyperlink in the description, and I get that snapshot of those parameters that we were just looking at. So this parameter snapshot stays with the journal entry. So there's your audit trail. And if we needed more detail, then we can actually download, by clicking on this, we can download an Excel file that has the details of the expenses that made up that restriction release. So going back to my restriction log or my release log, you can see that this one has passed. We've got the journal entry there. I'm going to go back to my dashboard now. And you can see that the, whoops, I didn't mean to open that up. You can see that Travis County contract now has the full amount of revenues released to match the expenditures. So as you can imagine, like doing that across a whole lot is a lot of manual work if you didn't have that automation. So we think that's pretty cool. It's relatively new, and we're pretty excited about being able to deploy that for our nonprofit clients.
Yes, as you can imagine, that can be a huge time savings for a nonprofit that is having to do a lot of release from restrictions. Also, that would greatly improve the accuracy of those release from restrictions. Because let's face it, we're only human, and there's bound to be errors from time to time. One thing that can help you get away from errors in your GL is the improved GL outlier detection within Sage Intacct. This leverages machine learning to take a look at your GL and looks for things that are outside of the normal coding. So it's also looking at those dimension values and the amounts as well. So say something is off month over month by, a value, let's just say you add a 0. What it's going to do is it's going to ping that and have that out for review. And at that stage, you can either confirm that, yes, it looks good, or, we did actually catch something that was an outlier and we can edit that. Now, also using that same GL Outlier Assistant, we can use this now for approvals. So not only can we use that to do the initial approval before it's submitted, you can actually elect to choose it to be the sole approver as well. So if you have an accounting department that doesn't have a lot of accountants or a lot of people reviewing those journals, and you just want to have an extra step in there before things get posted to sort of highlight something that might be off, you can use it there as well. So it's a very nice feature to have, and it's only going to improve in your instance as time goes on, because it really will learn your instance, learn the codings, and highlight things that are off. That's a expense that's not normally coded to that program, or that is a much higher amount than any other month in the year. So that's what you would look to expect using the GL Outlier Assistant.
Yeah, good point, Michael. Once you turn that on, it starts scanning your transactions, and as Michael said, it's using machine learning, and so every time you correct or add a new transaction, it's adding to its understanding of how the patterns in your accounting system should be. We're also seeing a lot more AP automation, and this is a benefit, of course, again, to understaffed nonprofits as well as everybody else. So there's two key parts of the AP automation that have been really beefed up here in the last few years. And one of those is the intake of new bills into the process. And, we're seeing a lot of this throughout different accounting systems, and especially specialized AP automation tools like Bill.com, and which is one of the biggest. But this functionality also is now native in Sage Intacct, and it's in general release. It's something that can be enabled by your partner if you're working through a partner, or by Sage if you're a direct customer. But I can show you a little bit in a minute here about how that works, but also at the other end of the whole AP process is that making the payment piece. And again, there's a lot of third-party AP automation tools out there, but Sage recently has rolled out vendor payments using a payment processor called CSI. And this is a payment process that is native inside then your AP processing, so you don't have to go out to another third-party system to make that work. So I can't demo that, unfortunately, because it is a true banking situation, and I don't have that capability. But I will show you how AP bill automation works here. Let me just once again share my screen. Okay, so this is just a regular listing of AP bills. Something that you'll see that's new if you have already been using or have used Intacct in the past is there's now this upload and refresh couple of buttons here at the top of my AP bills list. And this these appears as soon as I got the AP bill automation enabled on this company. If I click the upload button, I get a pop-up window that gives me some choices about how I'm going to generate the bills and what location they're going to. In this case, this is a multi-entity company that's set up, so it has a lot of different possibilities of places that things could go, but I'm just going to send this to general. And what I have is a PDF of a bill. And I'm just going to drag this PDF into the browse files there, and you'll see that it has been grabbed here and it's identified it. And then I just click create bills and then I hit refresh. Now, right now in the background, the AI is analyzing that bill and figuring out how it needs to code it. So while it's working on that, we can take a look at the one that I put in yesterday. So let's open that up, and you can see here it comes in a draft format. It recognized the vendor based on the PDF, and it also put that PDF as an attachment here in the bill. So I can actually view that PDF side by side with the bill, and I can see where it got the vendor name from. Down here, you can see how it is coded, and it's coding that way based on the way that we have coded or set this vendor up in Intacct previously. And then it is picking up the location and program and all that from previous billing. So it's learning as it goes along, a lot like that GL Outlier that we were talking about. So you can do a whole batch of bills this way. Besides uploading, you can also have a dedicated email address where the vendor would then be prompted to send their bills. And of course, if you're getting paper bills, you can scan them and drop them in here as well. So that's pretty slick. We think it's it's native in the system and does not require subscribing to another whole software.
I also like that side-by-side view that they implemented for that as well.
Yeah,
It makes it much easier to review.
absolutely.
And one thing that Tom can't show you, but sort of hinted at, is that vendor payments from CSI. So you could intake those bills, have them reviewed, put that in, and pay right out of Intacct. So that is, you just select a payment method, and it's just all within the system. You don't have to worry about sending out those ACHs, sending out those checks. When you do set up CSI, vendors have options of how they want to be paid. And also it's rather economical, the fees for ACHs and checks from CSI. So it can be a good option if you're looking to save a lot of time with your AP processes.
Yeah.
So we talked about spending the money, but how about managing that spend? Budgets are really important to a lot of nonprofits. You want to make sure you're being really effective with your funds to provide the greatest value your organization can. So most budgets are an after the fact review. So you can plan for the future the best you can. You can review things, month over month after you spent the money, or annually, but we don't have a lot of control at the moment or have a lot of insights unless you have a very detailed process at the moment of where you're at against your budget. So Sage Intacct has a tool called Spend Management, and it's really useful if you want to have that extra control. You want to see where I'm at versus my budget as I'm spending it, and if I want to have more controls built into that. Do I want it to warn that I may be over budget? Do I want it to have a hard stop to where I can never exceed my budget? Also, this validation can take place in multiple parts of the system. So if you're using purchasing and the POs, you can set it up there. If you're just using accounts payable bills, you can set it up and configure it there. And then also, if you're just doing journal entries, you can have spend management there as well. And it can be configured in all of these. It's not, you just have to choose one. It also has the expanded capability is if you're keeping a special commitments book or encumbrances, you can also have that as part of your calculation for spend management. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we'll look at configuring spend management. Just want to highlight a few things. It does require that you have a designated budget. So spend management will only work with one budget. That is just one thing to note. And then we can also have it notify a approver, so a budget approver, and they will be able to get email notifications when someone's going over budget. We can validate certain levels of the system. So if we want to validate against program as an expanded dimension of the budget, we can. If you don't need dimension values that you want to validate against, you can do that as well. And then down here, you can also see we can set it up in purchasing, accounts payable, and the general ledger. Also, we're able to say stop or warn at each level. So you have that flexibility there. Also, if you do have committed expenses or encumbrances set up as a special book through the purchasing module, that can be included as well. So what does that actually look like? Take us over to purchasing and a purchase order. So here I'm entering a purchase order. You can see here I have office supplies and also just a office supplies vendor. And I'm just curious that, if I enter this purchase order, where am I going to be at with my budget? So we have this button here called Show Spend Insight, and this gets added when we configure spend management. Now this is going to show me where I'm at on my budget as it stands. So we can see my actuals and then my budget. We can see that I'm putting in 5,000 of committed expenses. So if this purchase is posted, it's going to include that in my balance. And then we're going to be at 133.35 remaining should I post this. So that, like I said, this is giving you great visibility as to where you're at versus your budget with a specific transaction. And you can see here, since we did select program, it is validating against that, but it takes a look at your budget, what we want to validate against, and you're getting that real-time insight. And then the second half of that is those real-time controls. So the ability to say, I want a warning if I'm going to be over budget, or do I need to send this off to my spend management budget admin, and they get warned when we're going over budget, or do I need a hard stop? I'm not actually allowing this purchase order to go through because it is over budget if I enter this transaction. So this gives you, great real-time visibility to a budget rather than an after-the-fact review of where you're at with your budget.
Yeah, and that's so valuable because after you have after you've already committed the money, then it's a little hard to go back and take it back, right?
Yeah, it's gone.
So getting those budgets under control is, of course, a key aspect of the finance department or finance function in a nonprofit. And then there's just generally managing cash, which, of course, the basic managing of cash involves bank reconciliations. And I know, there are those of us who take some satisfaction in just sitting down and checking off statement items versus book items and getting that reconciliation done. But, sometimes we just don't have time for that. So we're excited that we can now add a lot of automation to that whole bank rec process. And I'm going to show you now just a little bit about how that works and how it's set up. So I will share now. Are we seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so now I'm in cash management in Intacct, and I'm going to go to reconcile here. I'm going to do a bank reconciliation, and I started this, so I'm just going to continue with it. I haven't actually done the reconciliation yet, but I've got my statement ending date, and I have the balance off the statement, and I can actually right here in the reconciliation, I can attach the statement itself. So so that's super handy. The statement stays with the reconciliation and does not have to be stapled to a report and filed away somewhere. Once I have this basic information, well, actually, let me show you this. We are attached in this case to the Sage Banking Cloud, so I'm getting the bank feed. So I can see that my bank feed is up to date through today, and that my last transaction date was just a couple days ago. Now, when I click continue, you can see the wheel spins here for just a couple of seconds. All right. Now, here's the key thing. Over here I see amount to reconcile is 0. That is because in the background there, Intacct pulled that bank feed and it pulled the matching items in the Sage Intacct checking record, and it matched them all up. So I've already got I can go to my bank here and go to match transactions and filter that, and I can see like all of the transactions that it matched up. So it did all of that in just a couple of seconds there in the background. And what it's using here are matching rules. And we've set these up. Let me go back to my bank rec there. So you see I have this applied rule set here within my reconciliation. So if I click open on that, I have 5 different rules that it's using to match those bank transactions to the transactions that I already have recorded. So I've got, sometimes you have a bunch of bank entries that add up to a single accounting entry, or vice versa. So I have a one-to-many rule and I have a many-to-one rule. I also have the basic document numbers match. That's a good rule for matching. The amounts match, and the dates are within a certain range of each other. So if there's like a 2 or 3 day lag, I can put that as a rule to say that it's within 3 days of the posting date. Besides that, I can also within this rule set here, I can actually see my performance log. Well, I didn't give myself permission to that, but I can actually see how the rules are working and if they need to be refined. And if I can add more rules, there's no limit to how many rules I put into that applied rule set. And then I can have different rule sets for different accounts. So it's not locked into one for everything there, but the setup is pretty straightforward. The other piece of this, the same matching engine can be used to actually create journal entries if we know that, let's say we have a debit card entry that's going to come in from a certain vendor every month. Maybe the amount is different, but the vendor is always the same. Then we can actually set up a GL creation rule within our bank matching engine to just go ahead and create and match that journal entry when the bank transaction comes in. So you can see that can save a ton of time for the finance folks, especially if you have a lot of different accounts, or if you have accounts that need to be managed more than once a month, that you can just keep that reconciliation engine running, and it can reconcile to 0 every time you have a statement amount to use.
I'll share my screen. And Tom, I don't know who you were talking about, but I know when I did accounting with Sage Intacct, we were not utilizing matching rules back in the day. And I really wish we would have been, because that tedious clicking through matching one to many, many to one, that was not something I particularly enjoyed. That's why I was laughing in the background. So another thing is that can take up a bunch of time is reporting. Let's face it, there's a lot of reporting that requires specific formats. It can be a pain to build when you're setting it up. One thing that's nice we get with a Sage Intacct NFP Quick Start is we have a lot of reports already built for us in a lot of different formats. So I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of a few of those. As you can see here, we have many different reports that are just available for you right out of the box. So we have 990 reports, balance sheets, statement of activities, but we also get this nifty Quick Start library. So if anything happens to any of your Quick Start reports, you will always be able to come back here and download a new version of this for you. So notice even some of the statement of activities, we can get it in different formats. We can get it in a 117 format. We can get it in a 958 format. All that's going to be built out already, and we don't have to worry about reformatting reports, going in and manually manipulating these reports in any way. So it's just great to have all this available for you right out of the box. Now we also get this with dashboards. So not only do we have out of the box reports, we have a lot of nice role-based out-of-the-box dashboards. So just to highlight, a difference, maybe we have a CFO view, which would have information that's pertinent to be CFO. They want to see performance cards, some financial reports, cash balances, just various reports that can be configured in any way that you want, really. We can pull anything that is a financial report onto a dashboard. You can configure performance cards here, and then also any chart or graph that you may build. Also, the layout's very intuitive as well. If I wanted to click, drag, move any of these things, it's very easy to do so and give you the layout you want. So say I'm not the CFO, maybe I am AP manager or someone working in AP. We can switch to a different dashboard, and you can see here, this is a role specific dashboard that's giving me quick access to information I'm going to need to do my job. So I have a vendor aging right here. We have accounts payable balances, intercompany payable balances, and our total cash and cash equivalents. Once again, this can be totally reconfigured for you, but this is a great starting point for these role-based dashboards and giving you an idea of what you may want to be able to do.
Yeah, again, those are those pre-built dashboards and all that report library just is included in the not-for-profit quick start template that we use. Got another polling question in here, so make sure you get those answered. Get your CPE credit. All right, so I wanted to also make sure that we cover the whole process, well, not the whole process, but the outcomes that are captured in your monitoring and evaluation initiative if you have that going on. So with Sage Intacct, we have statistical accounts where we can record non-financial data, and then we can do calculations off it, either against other statistical data, or we can calculate with dollars. So as an example here, I have a school program in a place where we want to make sure that grade 6 students are graduating and getting on to grade 7, so that they're moving on to the next level of schooling, and we want to see how our program is doing. And if we're succeeding at moving those students along. So the sample calculation here is just that we've got 80 students from last year that are now starting in grade 7, and we know that we had 175 students that completed grade 6 in June. So simple calculation, right? We're just doing some division, and we're going to put that into a percentage format. So I will show you now just how we can do that in the Sage Intacct environment. So I have created a couple of accounts, and I'm actually going to jump to this journal here. All right, so I created a couple of statistical accounts. You can see them down here in this entry. So I've got the grade 6 students finishing, and then the grade 7 students that are starting. And I just made a statistical journal entry with those two amounts that we just saw. So, as of September, we know that we've got 80 students starting, and we know how many finished last year. So pretty easy journal entry there. Because it is a statistical journal entry, it doesn't need to have debits and credits, just either shows an increase or a decrease. From there, I created a computational account group, and it's very straightforward. So besides having financial account groups and statistical account groups, we can have these computations, and we can specify a formula. So you can see here, I've just got, just as I had in that illustration, the grade 7 students divided by the grade 6 students. And we want to display that or as a percentage with 2 decimal places. So the final piece of this is I'm going to go to my school metrics dashboard here. So I've got some key information here that I'm tracking. As Michael talked about in the other demonstration, we've got what are called performance cards here across the top in this dashboard. And I'm just going to add, just to make it simple, another performance card for that percentage of students who are continuing to 7th grade. So I'm just going to add a performance card here. And we'll just call this students continuing. And then I'm going to pick that account group that we just looked at. I want it for the current year. And I'm going to show it as percentage without rounding. And you see I'm going to compare it to the prior year and then show how it's trending using an icon of an arrow. All right, so when I click save on that, you see the new performance card appears over here at the right, and there's that calculation. Now, that wasn't a complicated calculation, but you could see that you could have a whole lot of different M&E outcomes that you're reporting here within a dashboard, and you can show them like this in a performance card. We have, for instance, enrollment, and then we have tuition, and then we have tuition per student. So we're using a formula there on that. So anyway, you could have a outcomes dashboard with a whole lot of this that would be available then to your staff and your stakeholders.
And it's just really nice to see that we can leverage the software to do those calculations.
We're not seeing the slide full size there, Michael.
All right, 1 second. I need the GL Outlier assistant for my screen shares. Yeah, and it's just nice to see that we can leverage the software to do those calculations and not have to go in, export data, throw it into Excel, spit something else out. All that can be thrown onto a dashboard, and it looks at the actuals within your system as they come in. So,
yeah, and you can capture that. Those statistical amounts could be captured in the field by somebody using a Google Sheet on a mobile app, and then that can be imported through a CSV upload. So it's not required or restricted to somebody in the finance office making these entries. Well, there's a lot of nonprofits that are using Sage Intacct, and that's one of the reasons that they keep building out additional functionality here. And it's sort of a virtuous cycle because, if you look around at other applications, we're finding that we can do a lot more with Intacct than ever before, and particularly rolling out these kinds of functions that are specific to the nonprofit community. I think that it's helping solve some of those basic challenges across a wide variety of nonprofits out there doing good stuff.
So just to give you a quick recap, we covered accounting challenges that are specific to nonprofits nowadays. Managing grant fund and donor accounting with the use of dimensions, managing and automating those restrictions and release from restrictions, the GL Outlier assistant and review stages that you can do with that, AP bill automation and payment that will save a ton of time for an AP department, budgets and spend management so that you have real-time insight into where you're at with your budget, bank reconciliation automation, one of my personal favorites, pre-built reports and dashboards, specific for nonprofits. So you're not going to have to worry about building out reports or formatting. And then also outcome metrics. And I think we have a question that was asked in Q&A. So Tom, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, so the question was whether a certain type of journal entry could be set to require an approval. And yeah, in fact, when you're configuring general ledger approvals, you can specify exactly which journal is going to be approved by whom, and also which journals you might want to turn on that outlier assistant for that Michael was talking about, to give the first line of approval to the outlier assistant, and either give feedback on that to the submitter, or pre-approve it and just send it on to final approval. So yes, you can tag certain type of JE. We have any other questions? Just feel free to type them in the Q&A. All right, well, thank you so much for taking your time and spending an hour with us here to see some of the capabilities of just how technology can help take some of that load off the finance folks, and just at least get some of the grind of the details out of the way, so that you can focus on really valuable stuff and your strategy and your mission. Thanks again. And also, if you check your email, you will be receiving a link to the recording and the materials that we've had here. And feel free to reach out to Michael or myself with any questions. Our contact info is here, and it'll be in the materials that you receive. Have a great day.